Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Monster Hunter Rise. I have tried out two other Monster Hunter games previous to this one, Monster Hunter Generation Ultimate for the Nintendo Switch, and then I put about 5 hours into Monster Hunter World. And I wanted so badly to like Monster Hunter and enjoy it because it all looks so cool. The monster designs looked awesome, the armor, the gear, it all looks so fun, and anyone who had played Monster Hunter before always just championed it, saying it's the greatest series of all time and it's so fun and you really gotta try it out. And everyone said that Rise was the one for people to really jump on and join in the fray. And since World didn't quite click with me, I was a little hesitant to try out Rise, but I'm really glad I did. And I did play all of the single player missions, if that's any testament to how much I did enjoy this game and how much it actually did hook me. You know what they really just needed to do? They just needed to add dogs. This game introduced this animal called the Palamutes. It already had the Palicos, which were these helper cats, but this game introduced Palamutes, and it's basically like these dogs that you can ride, and they help you fight, and they're good boys. You can pet them, you can shake their hand and give them treats and things like that. It is a lot more enjoyable than Palicos if you're a big dog fan such as I. I actually made my own Palamute look just like my dog in real life. He has the curved ears and everything. He's so adorable. I also named him after my dog. You can also customize your Palico, and I named him Mimo, and then you can customize your own character. And I wish I didn't spend as much time as I did customizing my own character, because I didn't really realize that I would be wearing a helmet most of the time, so I couldn't see my character's face anyway. I made him look awesome. He has this big ol' afro, but I just had a helmet on the whole time. Now granted, in the settings you can turn this off so your head is just always exposed, but I would prefer rather to have a helmet than not. I just wish I knew ahead of time that my face would be covered most of the time anyway. There's a lot of stuff to learn. Just because it is a good intro point for Monster Hunter inquirers, there's a lot of tips and tricks and tutorials. It is all front loaded with this stuff. Once you master the basics, they don't really introduce any new mechanics after that. They won't add any more difficult mechanics to learn or master once you pick it all up initially, so don't be intimidated going into this and playing an hour and just thinking you're just overwhelmed, because you will get a hold of it eventually. Ideally, you would have someone who is a Monster Hunter veteran kind of show you the ropes, but I didn't have that and I was able to pick it up just fine. Not to mention we have the whole resource of YouTube and the internet, you know, IGN.com. There's a ton of resources there to help you learn outside of the game as well. So what does a typical gameplay loop look like? Well, first, you are going to pick out a mission. Now, this game is kind of divided into two separate games, if you want to think of it that way. There's the village quests, which are strictly single-player missions, and then there's the hub quests, and that's more for the multiplayer aspect of the game. So I only played the village quests. I didn't really touch any of the hub quests. I wasn't ever really connected to online. I mostly just play on the go. But each of these missions are divided up into separate tiers. So your first tier, it's just like these intro level monsters missions, kind of to help you learn the ropes of the game. And then as you progress, there's a special mission that you have to play through in order to unlock the second tier of these missions. You can skip some of these missions in order to unlock the special mission that gets you into the next tier, but I did play every single mission that I possibly could. So once you go into your mission, you go into a secluded map. It's not an open world game. There's only 5 different maps in the whole game, which I really wish there was more, because these maps can start to feel a little repetitive. But on the flip side of the coin, you do get pretty familiar with your bearings around where you're at, where certain resources are at, where monsters tend to hover, so you really get a mastery of the land since you replay them so many times. You're gonna go into your tent first, and then you're going to eat some bunny dango, I think it's called, and this is basically a food. It's like food on a stick, and you can choose 3 3 different buffs, and there's a chance that that buff will activate when you eat this. You also get some health and some stamina buffs, so that's nice. So once you're fueled up with food, you hopefully got the buffs that you wanted for your character, you're gonna go to the treasure chest and stock up on some potions that they give you for free, get your resources ready, and then you're ready to head out. And the mission will tell you ahead of time, I want you to hunt this certain monster, or I want you to gather this many materials. And in the top corner, it'll say which of the big monsters are in the map. So you can just go straight to your main objective, do it, call it a day, or you can go through and defeat all of the big monsters that you possibly can for their resources. I would defeat all of the big monsters every mission that I possibly could until I got around the 5th tier and the 6th tier of the missions, and by that point, if I knew that I had plenty of resources that that monster provided, I would tend to skip it and just go straight for the mission objective. There is a time limit for these missions, but I never hit that time limit. At first I was a little worried because I hate being timed when I'm playing through a game. I'd rather just take my time and smell the roses, but most of the time they would give you, I think it's 50 minutes to complete a mission, and I felt like I killed so much time and I never hit that threshold. I'm not even really sure why they even have that time limit to begin with, but going into it, just don't worry, the time limit is basically non-existent. You'll have plenty of time to do all your missions, all your objectives that you want to do. So you're gonna go around, you can go straight to the main objective if you want, but it might be a good idea to explore and gather resources such as minerals and herbs to craft your potions. There's a whole crafting aspect for potions and also gear, so that's where the minerals come in. You might want to pick up a couple of buffs. There's a lot of like insects around that you can gather that will boost up your defense for this particular mission, your attack, it'll lower your stamina. You just want to explore, kind of build up your character. So once you're ready, once you're mentally prepared to fight this main monster, you're gonna go up to them and start attacking them. And it's not like this typical button masher, it's a really methodical fight. You kind of have to look at the monster, see when they're rearing up to dive at you. They'll usually have a tell if they're going to attack. The instantaneous attacks that they do usually don't do that much damage, but if they are, you know, prepping for a really big strong attack, your guy will even like warn you, like, be careful, incoming, and then you know that you need to dodge out of the way or start running away because the monsters are preparing a really strong attack. I wouldn't say this game is as hard as like a From Software game like Dark Souls or something like that. Granted, I haven't played too much of those games either, but when you really take your time for a game like this, it isn't that hard, because think about it, you get 10 potions that you can use and 5 mega potions that you can use, and then if you happen to use all of that stock, you can just run back to your item box and stock up on more potions. So as long as you know when to back away, take some potions, your weapon will also lose durability, so it won't do the maximum damage that it possibly could. You just need to know when to scooch back, start sharpening your weapon, and you'll be just fine. Even if you get hit by a lot of monster attacks, the fights will take longer because you'll just be stumbled to the ground. But with the inclusion of these wire bugs, it helps you zip around and makes the combat a lot quicker than previous Monster Hunter games. The wire bugs themselves are basically grappling hooks that you can shoot out in the air and it'll zip you around. You can combine these with attacks to do these awesome over-the-top aerial attacks. I didn't really talk about the weapon that I chose, but there are 14 different weapons that you can potentially choose. Going into this, I did my research. Playing Monster Hunter World, I played the longsword, and that seemed very dependent on doing counterattacks and things like that, and that just never clicked with me. So after doing my homework for this one, I decided I want a big ol' hammer. And as clunky as it may seem, with the inclusion of these wire bugs, I felt like I was zipping around and going through the air doing these flips, and I didn't have any problem at all with the hammer. The combos themselves with the hammer seem very straightforward as well. Basically, you're just mashing the X or the A button, so it was pretty easy to pick up. The hammer itself is also pretty cool because you can, if you hit the monsters in the head enough times, they will kind of get like this little concussion, and they will just be stunned on the ground, and then you can do a lot of attacks there. I was having some difficulty using the hammer near the end game because it just seemed like the monsters were zipping around so quick. There was a lot more aerial monsters as well, so I felt like I was just waiting for the cooldown of my wire bug attacks as well. So near the end of the game, I was debating, man, should I switch up my weapon for something else? But I stuck it through with the hammer the whole way through. I definitely recommend it. Now, I can't really say what the other weapons are like in this game because I didn't try out any of them, but I hear that they are all accessible and they are all viable. So just go ahead and try out whatever one fits your playstyle. Now, the monster itself, during the big ol' fight, he will start getting tired, and usually, I don't think there's ever been a full fight in one place. The monster will get scared and run away. It kind of makes you feel good too, because initially, you are a little intimidated about coming across the monster, especially if it's a brand new monster. Whenever you encounter a mission that introduces a new monster, they will have this little introduction, little short for you that kind of shows you what the monster is all about as it's hunting like some of the smaller monsters. It kind of has this like old film grain too, so it looks like you're watching this short through an old movie projector or something like that. But the monsters themselves, they're big, they're intimidating, they're scary. They kind of seem like they were designed by a 11-year-old, but the 11-year-old was describing this monster design to these expert designers who really made it come into fruition. So let's say just picture like an 11-year-old saying like, oh, it's a giant Tyrannosaurus Rex. But whenever it wants to use these fire powers, giant fins come out and it can just blow flamethrowers all over the place. Let's make this like weird white dragon with no eyes and a neck that stretches out like a worm, and let's just add electricity powers for the heck of it. Or let's make like this flying saber-toothed tiger that is super quick, you know? And then as this kid is explaining these things, the designer's like, all right, let's make something actually like legitimately cool out of this basic 11-year-old idea. And so you just feel like a little kid looking at these monster designs. They are awesome. And so going into a fight with one of these, you are a little intimidated, but as you start beating them up, as they start running away from you because they're actually scared of you, you start getting really confident. You start feeling really cool and powerful. The fights though are so thrilling and intense. I don't think I've ever played a game that has made me sweat more profusely before, because it is intense and I just completely ignore the world around me, because you really need to watch frame by frame in order to dodge some of these attacks. You just need to be invested and smart about the whole fight. It's definitely not a button masher by any means. Eventually, if you do enough of these wire bug attacks on the enemy, you are able to ride these monsters, which is one of the coolest aspects about this game. I'm not sure if it was introduced in this game or came out in previous Monster Hunters, but you can ride the monster. Now, if you want to just do damage to this monster, you can just ride them into the wall and rack up that damage, and after you hop off of them, they're tied down to the ground for a while, so you can even get some cooler combos off after that. Or, I don't know why I get such a kick out of watching my enemies fight my enemies, but you can ride them into a different large monster on the map and have them fight each other. And you can do these awesome attacks if you build up this meter. Eventually you have to hop off the monster. And ideally I would have really liked if these big monsters just kind of duked it out and I could watch. I guess the game designers thought this would be too easy, however, because most cases after you hop off the monster that you are riding, he will start to run away, and then you have to track him down anyway. I just want these monsters to clash. Even when they encounter each other naturally, you don't ride one to the other one. They only fight very briefly, and then one of them does run away. These are very skittish monsters, terrifying as they may look. So after this big long fight with the monsters, these can take anywhere from 5 minutes to 20 minutes. They are seriously long and intense. They finally get down. So you can either trap them when they're low health, and that's more of the pacifist way. If you are opposed to killing these monsters, if you think they are just doing their own natural life and you're just coming in and ruining their day, you can choose to trap them. And I do feel like you are incentivized to do this. One, because it ends the fight shorter than it would be if you killed these monsters. And two, you have a chance of getting rare monster parts if you do trap them. What happens to these monsters after you trap them? I have no idea. I don't want to know. I just assume we set them free. And don't worry how you got the rare monster parts. Or if you don't have any traps on hand, or if you just want to fight them to the death, you can do that, and then you can carve out materials from them 3 times before it kicks you out of this map, and then you go back to the World Hub. Now the World Hub itself I thought was very nice. The whole world itself feels very Asian inspired. The music, the background music is in a different language. I assume it's Japanese. Just the architecture of all the buildings, very Japanese, Asian. And it just kind of feels like coming home after a long battle at war because it's all peaceful, everyone's so nice, there's no stress, and it kind of gives you this impression like, okay, this is what I was defending. This is why I was going out and fighting those monsters, is to defend my hometown. There's petals floating in the wind. It is a very nice aesthetic. And the most exciting thing about coming to this hub world is you can use these resources that you gathered out on your mission in order to craft cool weapons and armor. And these weapons and armors do tend to reflect on the materials that you harvested. So let's say that I fought a giant electric monster and I happened to gather just enough materials in order to craft an electric hammer. It looks like it's an electric hammer. It's even got like the same color fur as the monster that I just defeated. It is very reflective of the monster, and all of them were so cool. Even at the beginning of the game, the early game armor and gear looked like late game gear in other video games. This is mainly how you progress. There's not really any leveling up or abilities. You basically start with your move set that you're going to have throughout the whole game, and the only thing that advances is your gear and your mastery over the weapon that you chose to use. There's also a buddy plaza, and this is where you can hire more palicos if you want, more palamutes. You can send these out on missions in order to gather other resources. You can also call in your Kahoot. I didn't really talk about my Kahoot, but he's like this friendly owl, and he'll gather up materials and put them in his nest for you to gather up, so you can pet him. I just like this whole idea of me and my animal friends. You know, I got my Palamute, my Palico, and I got my Kahoot. What else do I need in a single player game? They actually do help a lot too. Like I told my Palico to mainly focus on healing, so he would take off debuffs that monsters would put on me. I told my Palamute to help me fight, and he kind of helps you tank off the monsters, like aggro them away from you so you can take potions or sharpen your weapon or whatever. So I really got an attachment to my animal friends, and I like that I was able to interact with them in so many ways. You can also get gear for your animal friends, even your Kahoot, where after you craft materials, you get the scraps of that monster, and then you can make that gear also for your Palamute and Palico. And I think this armor is just so adorable, but also scary because they're made out of like monster parts. It's a fun dynamic. And that's basically it. Granted, you can get a couple of side quests, a couple side things to do while you're out on the mission. Things like take a picture of this or gather this many materials, and you'll get little buffs from there. But then you just go back and hop into another mission and do it all over again. And it is actually a pretty exciting loop. It was always that, like, one more mission, you know? And I cruised through this game a lot faster than I thought I would. It is a shorter of the game, and there's not that much of a story in terms of, like, narrative. Basically, there's a rampage of monsters, and they're all attacking the village. But even then, it didn't really touch much on it. It kind of implied that it was due to this monster that, like, feeds off of the horde, the rampage, and he's called Magnum Mallow. He's like the big baddie monster of this game in particular. And so by the time you got to the 4th tier, you do all the missions in the 4th tier, you have a face-off with the Magnum Mallow, and then the credits roll. And I felt a little upset, even a little cheated, like, what? It's only been like 10 hours. This was such a short game. I always heard like these Monster Hunter games were so long. But after the credits rolled, I looked at my time playing, and I was a little over 20 hours. And that just goes to show how much time flies when you're playing this game. And before you're worried too much that there's not enough single player content in this game, there are also 2 more tiers on top of the tier 4. So by the time I had finished this game, I was just under 30 hours, and I felt like I was good in terms of single player. Now, a lot of people will argue this is where the real meat and potatoes of the game, like this is where the real game starts. And ideally, what Monster Hunter would want you to do is hop online and start doing these bigger hunts with these bigger monsters with other Monster Hunters. Like I said, I'm typically a single player. I think my Nintendo Switch Online account even has lapsed over, so I don't even have access to online play with other people at the moment. I was happy with the time that I spent on this game. Ideally, I guess I could technically go through and replay all of the missions and hunt all the monsters, get all the gear, but I was pretty happy with the game length that they have offered here. Now, there's also a side mission that I forgot to mention earlier, where it's kind of like this tower defense mode where monsters are basically trying to attack the main city. So you need to defend the pathway by building all of these defensive turrets. You can go around and hit the monsters as well, and they only make you do this once in the single player mode. There's a rotating mission that you can do for this horde mode where you are just doing a tower defense. I wasn't too crazy about it because I just wanted to hunt monsters and play the traditional gameplay, but as a side piece, if I wanted even more content to kind of mix things up, this tower defense game was actually pretty interesting, and it does seem like it would have a lot of depth that you could dive into. As far as the technicality of the game, I think it runs really well on the Nintendo Switch. Even the load times themselves aren't bad at all. Going into a main map of the 5 different missions that you can go to takes maybe like 20 to 30 seconds, but once you're in, you're in. Even if you choose to fast travel to one of your camps, it's pretty instantaneous. And it looks really nice too. Granted, in the distance, stuff can start to seem pretty pixely and have some low frame drops, especially like the flying mini monsters in the background. They start looking pretty bad, but once you get closer, they look really smooth and really nice. The monster designs and the armor, it just looks really nice and polished. Overall, I had a great time playing this game, and I'm really glad that I tried it out sooner rather than later. I think I will give this game a 5 out of 5, and if you are interested at all in Monster Hunter, I think this is the game to do it so far, because it just was really friendly to kind of ease you into the difficulty and really help you learn the systems. And if you are struggling with the game, if you need any hints or tips, please leave a comment and I will kind of guide you to the right path to kind of dip your toe into this game. And if I don't even know, I will do the research to help you find out how to play this game effectively. Also, let me know if you have any comments about other Monster Hunter games. What's the one that you started with? What are your feelings about Monster Hunter? Did you watch the movie that came out recently? I didn't hear anyone talk about it, so I assumed that it ended up being really bad. That's it for me. I'll talk to you later. Bye!